All right, so once you get your fresh copy of Moom available, there's a couple of things that are universal on almost every rig that you're going to see. Every rigger, every character designer, when they create it, there's some universal things that almost every rig has. But each rig is unique. I like Moom, and I've used Moom in this class for 5 years because he's a cartoony character. He's not too difficult to control. Very generic. Okay, the rig's done really well. If you download other rigs, some are rigged as well as Moom, but he's just simple. There are other rigs that give you more options, more points of articulation. If you think about rigs like digital puppets or marionettes, you think about some of the good puppets versus some of the bad puppets. You know, a simple puppet could be a sock with somebody talking. That, in a sense, is a rig. Or a puppet could be something as complicated as like a Muppet, with lots of with eyes that blink and all sorts of things. Like I said, Moom is pretty universal across the board. When you open him up, the first thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to make sure that you've got your channels box open. In your channels box with Moom in there, he's going to come in and he's basically got 5 different layers that you can turn on and turn off. When you bring him in, all that's visible is his geometry. I want you to pay close attention. You've got right controls. If you click once, it makes them visible. Now I can control the right side of Moom. If I hit once on the mid controls, now I can see his middle controls. If I hit once on the left controls, now I can see his left controls. It's going to be important to be able to differentiate between those and also to be able to turn them off. When you're done animating Moom, you want to turn the controls visibility off. Notice on geometry, you've got this little R. That means restricted. It means that I can't touch his geometry. We don't want you to be able to touch his geometry. If I turn off the restricted on his geometry and screw with his faces, well, he's got it locked down, so I can't mess with the geometry. But if you start messing with the geometry, it ends up causing you issues. So just leave him locked. The next is the skeleton where it says do not touch. Please be advised that that means not to touch the skeleton. It's all locked down, and a good rigger is going to be able to lock down controls. A good rigger is going to be able to take a character, an animal, whatever it is that he's rigged, even up to, I've seen cars that are rigged, airplanes that are rigged. A good rigger is going to make sure that a good animator can't screw it up, because animators will do everything in their power to screw up the rig. And so they're going to lock down things that the animator could potentially mess up. But the good news is we have lots of options. So starting from the top down, I'm going to select Moom on the bottom. There's a little circle that he sits on. This is his base. When I select the base, if you go to the channels box, you see lots of options right off the bat. Translate X, Y, and Z. Okay, well that's basically just taking the rig. If I move the rig, that's going to change that translate value. That's not important. That's the same as with any polygon. Rotate X, Y, and Z. Again, same thing if I want to rotate Moom to face a different direction. Global scale. This is kind of cool. This allows me to make Moom bigger or smaller. If I click on the word, and this is good news with any rig, or really with any control in the channels box. If you click on the word, and then middle mouse click and drag left or right in your perspective or side view or whatever, you can change the size of Moom. So I can make Moom smaller or bigger with that global scale. Or I can just type in a value. So if I want Moom huge, I can type in 10. If I want him regular size, I type in 1. Visibility, I can turn Moom's visibility off. I don't know why you'd want to do that. I guess if you wanted him off in a certain scene and then on in another, that would work. Resolution. Now this one where it says off, you can't change that, but it's basically just telling you, and this is something to look for in rigs, essentially what this is telling you is that the next several controls deal with resolution. Visibilities, it's the same thing. The next several controls deal with visibilities. So resolution, always animate in the low settings because that's going to allow your computer to move freely and really let you get the nitty gritty. And then to do some of the in-betweens and some of the cleanup, you'll go into the resolution and turn the resolution to the highest or the high. And then that actually, when you render out, Moom's going to look a lot prettier than he would otherwise. Continuing on through this, on the visibilities head, obviously you can turn the head controls off. Same with the arm, the leg, the spine, all of that stuff. But what I really want to look at is I want to look at the facial panel. I want to turn the face panel on. The face panel is going to allow me to come in and adjust his pupil, adjust his eyelids. Okay, you can smash that in. You can work his eyebrows, work his jaw. These will all be critical when we do our dialogue matching assignment. Some of you have already done a dialogue matching assignment, so we may not repeat it. But that's all your controls there. You've got a tongue, all sorts of stuff. You've got to go into the face settings to turn on some of the information. We're not really going to mess with this. We're going to leave this pretty well alone for right now because we don't really care about Moom's face. We're going to more worry about his walking abilities. Okay, but those are. Now I can't get it reset. Keep trying. Try to reset a rig. It's called zeroing it out, and that's essentially what I'm trying to do. I've already screwed up a lot of stuff, so I'm trying to zero out the rig. The value also might be 1. 1 and 0 are good default values to try. Let me try -1 on this. Let me try 1 on this. Yeah, that's perfect. So now that's back to default.
We need the instructor. Tell us. Okay.
Now, other controls when you get your right foot. You're bound by certain constraints. These constraints are called inverse kinematics. Inverse kinematics basically is a rule in rigging and in robotics that says when you select a joint higher in the chain, it affects the rest of the joints equally. I'm not explaining it very well, but basically what it means is if I move the foot, if I move it up, the knee is going to react and the waist is going to react. This rig is set up with IKs so that you can move the feet that way. You're moving the controls. Now you can move the controls via the translate tool. You also have a few more controls right in here. So when I select the foot control, you see I've got one called ball to toe. If I select that, that moves the... Apparently whatever I'm doing today, Moom is not happy with me. Ball to toe lets me kind of tap his foot. That's a really good, that's a good one to use in the walk. The ball of the foot is really good. That lets me put Moom up on his toes. Okay. I've got this toe twist. If I click that, I can, stomp the cigarette into the ground, right? And then you've got this toe FK, which is a forward kinematic thing, which allows me to get a little more control in the toe. The same is for the left foot. The arm, same thing. We've got a control on the arm. Right here, when you get in on the fingers, you've got an overall hand control that's going to let me curl the fingers. It's going to let me scrunch the fingers. It's going to let me relax the fingers. Of course, if you do all of them, you end up with this. And that's not fun at all. Okay, so I reset that. Or you've got individual finger controls. You can bend it. And those are really nice as well. Now, one thing to note for this version of Moom that I've downloaded, for whatever reason, the right arm is coming in as an FK rather than an IK. Meaning that if I want to rotate or if I want to change the right arm, I have to do it a joint at a time. I have to do wrist, elbow, shoulder. Okay, if I move the wrist, it doesn't move the elbow or the shoulder. So that limits me, but it also allows me to fine-tune my animation a little. Rather than using IKs, if you come over down here and click on the R for the right controls, I can switch the arm to IKs instead of FKs. So inverse kinematics versus forward kinematics. And that gives me control over Moom. Again, instead of having a forward kinematic, it gives me an inverse kinematic. So that's just a little quick tutorial on Moom. But really, any rig you find, you're going to find a lot of hidden secrets and gems in the channels box and in your layers. And so looking through that is really going to help you to get your animation make your animation have more light. And then again, to animate Moom, essentially you take a control, you put it where you want it and hit S. You move down a few frames, you move the control and hit S. And that's going to create the animation in between. And then it's a matter of using the graph editor and a few other things to fine tune it. But for right now, that should give you a decent, at least a decent start with Moom. I think one of the best things you can do is get in and break Moom. Just mess with him and try to get him to look the stupidest you can to figure it out a little bit better. And then when you're ready, just grab a fresh copy off the server. So that's it. That's Moom, and hopefully that helps.